Welcome to MTG Friends. I'm Ryan. Let's do a Commander deck tech. This is Isshin, Two Heavens as One. Or is it Isshin, Two Heavens as One? Whatever. It's in Mardu colors. I believe that's Mardu colors. Red, white, black, right? Right? Yeah. 3/4 human samurai. If a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Keep in mind that's any creatures, yours or your opponent's, that cause your permanents to have a triggered ability. Then you get an additional trigger, y'all. So let's look at the packages as usual. This build, I know a lot of people are like, oh, Samurai's swinging alone triggers XYZ. That is not the build we're doing. This one is something I think a whole lot spicier. We got a hell of a lot of ramp in here because we're going to be dropping relatively big creatures onto the playfield that have lots of triggers. We got the usual combo pieces you would expect to see in red. We have just a few removal pieces, no mass removal except for Ruinous Ultimatum, which does mass removal only for your opponents. Just a couple control pieces. We'll talk about why Draneth is in here a little bit later. Completely swappable card out of this build. I just like it. Couple shenanigan pieces. A good amount of draw. And yes, you can see that there is Wheel of Fortune. You can easily swap this out for Wheel of Fate. I just put it in here because I really like it and I would run it myself. But I'll talk about it when we get to it later. A swappable card for sure. A whole lot of triggered creatures. Notice there's a lot of 5 drops, 6 drops, 7 drops because we're going to ramp like mofos to get to that ability to drop large creatures that do hilarious things when they trigger. Our land package is basically exactly what you'd expect to see for 3 colors. The fetch lands, the shock lands, the lands that come in untapped if you have an opponent. Just basically everything you'd expect. We're really not going to go through the land package. You can always check it out at the link below in the description for the Architect link. Just a few tutors, the ones you'd expect. A few protections pieces, including Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots, because we want to keep our commander out and other shizzle. Here we go with the packages. Again, thanks for being part of MTG Friends. Subscribe if you're new. Yeah. All right, Combat Celebrant. These all combo basically with each other. 2-card combos. If you have that one out or Delina Wild Mage out with Kiki Jiki, they all blast off into oblivion of creatures that are attacking. Splinter Twin does the same stuff. Zealous Conscript does the same stuff, untapped permanents. So the Kiki Jiki combo. If you're not familiar or you don't understand the Kiki Jiki combo with these particular cards, just ask me in the comments below. I don't want to belabor it. It's just hilarious and it gives you infinite creatures attacking. Yeah, buddy. And then the untap is just hilarious. All right, just a couple control pieces, deflecting swap, because after all, we are in red. If you have a commander, it doesn't cost you anything, and you can choose new target for target spell or ability. Draneth. Okay, so Draneth is in here because it allows you to shut down your opponents being able to cast their commander. That's the only reason I have it in here, because it's hilarious. I love it. Whenever I'm running white, I basically run Draneth. If there's another card you'd rather have in here, just get rid of Draneth. But it's a great card in white. Esper Sentinel, we're into draw. We want to be ramping a ton and drawing a ton. Just get going. Esper Sentinel is going to really do. This thing has spiked like I'm shocked how much this is spiked. So used to be a $10, $12 card. Now it's like 30, 40. I mean, it's what? So anyways, hopefully you picked up a few of these. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless that player pays X, where X is Sentinel's power. Fabulous 1-drop. Faithless Looting. I mean, we're in red. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards with flashback, which is great. We can do it again. Flashbacking. Magus of the Wheel. Tap 2, and then tap, sack it. Every player draws 7 cards. I mean, they're going to know it's coming, so that's the downside. But hey, refill our hand. Mind's Eye. I started playing this card A little bit ago, I hadn't really paid much attention to it, but you know, it is for 5, but we're ramping like I said. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may pay 1 if you do draw a card. Playing against 3 people, we can draw 3 cards if we got the mana for it, which probably will since you've dropped it on turn 5 or 4, or maybe even 3 depending on how you've ramped. Night's Whisper, you haven't seen this in many of our decks. I'm starting to really like this card. In black, you draw 2 cards and you lose 2 life. I mean, that's pretty good. Phyrexian Arena's in here. Just, I want to get the cards in our hand. There you go. You could certainly swap this one out for something else if you wanted to. Read the Bones, scry 2, draw 2. You lose 2. Ta-da! Seer's Sundial, a very underrated card. For landfall, whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2 if you do draw a card. Again, one of the reasons we're putting some of these draw cards that cost you is because we are really, really ramping in this deck, which is also why we have Solemn Simulacrum, sad robot. This one does not look sad to me, this version. That doesn't look like a sad robot. That looks like a robot that's going to kick your ass, actually. You drop it on the play field, you get an extra land. When it dies, you draw a card. Wheel of Fortune, like I said, yes, if you have it, or proxy it, that's always okay, right? Or you can put in a Wheel of Fate instead that has Suspend instead. But basically, for 3, not basically, but for 3, you draw 7, everybody draws 7, and you dump your card beforehand. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, land package. You know what? Let's not even bother spending 10 minutes on the land. It's the fetch lands. It's the shock lands. It's all the lands you'd expect to see in 3 colors. Yeah, fetch lands. We're running 8 mountains, 7 plains, and 5 swamps because that is where the color pips are in this. Let's see if you can see the stats. So stats here, we're mostly in red, and then we're even in black and white. So that's pretty much what's represented in this deck. Protection. Interestingly enough, the backstory to why Guardian of Faith is in here is because I'm actually playing a standard mono white deck where Guardian of Faith is in my sideboard. This thing is so incredibly great. When Guardian of Faith enters battlefield with flash, any number of other target creatures you control phase out, which means they don't exist until your next turn. This is fantastic. This is Teferi's protection for your creatures. So because we're not running mass removal, you got to assume that there's going to be at least a few mass removal pieces for each of your opponents. That's typically what happens. We want to be able to leave 3 open, white, colorless, and suddenly surprise the whole board with you going, oh, all my 10 creatures are safe. Yay! Until my next turn. Awesome card. I really like it. I wanted an additional protection piece besides Teferi's protection. Lightning Greaves to give us Shroud. Swiftfoot Boots to give us Hexproof with the haste and just give us a little extra protection. So the Shroud version, there are 2 equipments in here. So just be careful when you're using Lightning Greaves and how you're using them based off of the 2 equipments that we have in here, which we'll get to in a moment. Like I said, Teferi's protection, the OG awesomeness, most maximus protection spell in Magic for white, I think. All right, ramp. We got ones you're expecting, like Arcane Signet. Arcane Signet. Yes, I said Arcane Signet. And the other signets that we are expecting. I'm not editing that out. No. Dockside Extortionist. This one can give you a lot of treasure that you can tap for mana or crack for mana. Lotus Petal. Just a fan of Lotus Petal. If you don't have it, you can swap it out for another mana rock like Mind Stone or something. Mana Crypt. Like I said, if you don't have Mana Crypt and you're not going to shove it in there or proxy it, you can swap that out for Mind Stone or whatever. Mana Vault. It's just all the stuff you'd expect. Monologue Tax. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you create a treasure token. Regavan. This thing is hilarious. By now, you guys probably know what Regavan is. Whenever Regavan Nimble Pilfer deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and exile the top card of that player's library until end of turn. You may cast that card, and it's got dash. You keep bouncing it back in your hand. If for some reason you're just like, yeah, it's cool, but I'd rather put it in anything, something else, just put it in another mana rock. Mana rocks, rock. What? Smothering Tithe. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If he doesn't, create a treasure token. Smothering Tithe, so awesome. Which is why it's like shy of $50. Soul Ring, yep. Thran Dynamo. Like I said, we're ramping and we do have creature spells that are actually going to utilize that 3 colors mana pool that we could tap for Thran Dynamo, whatever, path to exile removal. Yeah, this is the one that you remove it and they get a basic land tapped for their troubles. Ruinous Ultimatum in the colors that we are playing. Destroy all non-land permanents your opponents control. One-sided there, folks. Does cost 3 white, 2 black, and 2 red, but very one-sided. Yeah, Sword of Plowshares. This one gives them life based on the exiles creatures power, right? Power. All right, couple shenanigan pieces. I just have this in shenanigans because it doesn't really have an easy spot to put it in for packages. Boros Charm deals 4 damage to target player or planeswalker. Permanent you control gain indestructible end of turn for mass removal issues. Target creature gains double strike until end of turn. That's a nice little surprise. You want to give a double strike to one of our big old creatures. All right, so couple more shenanigan pieces. Ember Cleave. We do have a triggered creature in here that lets us go tutor a equipment and then put it in the play field. Well, if we put this thing in the play field, we can then attach it. When Ember Cleave enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has double strike and trample. This thing can win you games, people. Win ya games. And I hadn't put Ember Cleave in a commander deck for... I don't know if I've ever put Ember Cleave in a commander deck. Most people like the swords, and yes, like this one. So we're running 2 equipments, this sword and Ember Cleave. Equipped creature gets 2/2 and has protection from red and from blue. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, sword of fire and ice deals 2 damage to any target. And you draw a card. I like the draw card for this build. That's why we got it. All right, we got triggered creatures. We got some really fun ones in here. All right, Alicia, who smiles at death for 3. First strike. Whenever death attacks, you can pay 2 in white, black, either or. If you do, return target creature card with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. And I don't think we have a lot of 2s. Let me look at this. Power. Oh, power. You know what? My brain broke for a second. And I was like, mana 2 or less. I don't think this card should be in here. But yes, I did triple check this. We do have creatures with power 2 or less that we can utilize. All right, Archon of Cruelty for 7. Whenever Archon of Cruelty enters battlefield or attacks, target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Discard a card and lose 3 life. You draw a card and gain 3 life. It does so much. It does so much. Aurelia, the War Leader. 2 red, white. Flying Vigilance, Haste. Whenever Aurelia, the War attacks for the first time each turn, untap all creatures you control after this phase. There's an additional combat phase. Yes. Combat phase is stacked too. Just keep that in mind. There's a couple other cards that'll matter. Bruiser Boorish Herder. Whenever Bruiser Boorish Herder enters the battlefield or attacks, target creature you control gains double strike and life link until end of turn. Whenever creature you control attacks, defender player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And for 5, creatures your opponent control block this turn if able, and you choose how those creatures block. That is hilarious. All right, Captain. One of the 2 power creatures that I was talking about. It's got haste, and when it attacks, you create a colorless treasure artifact token, and whenever you sack a treasure token, you get +1 till end turn. You're really not going to be sacking the treasure tokens for that. Drana, the Last Blood Chief. When it attacks, an opponent gets to pull something out of your graveyard that is non-legendary and put it on the battlefield for you. And that's pretty awesome. And it comes in, I think, with a 1/1 counter on it. Yes. And it happens to be a vampire, whether that matters. All right, Godo. This is one of the creature I was talking about that can go fetch an equipment for you. That would be Embercleave in this instance. Or you can grab the sword if Embercleave for some reason is in your hand. When Godo Bandit Warlord enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an equipment card and put it onto the battlefield. If you do, shuffle your library. When it attacks for the first time each turn, untap it and all samurai you control after this phase. There is an additional combat phase. That is just wonderful. There are, I think, a few samurai in here, but this is by no means a samurai deck. Goldspan Dragon is just so gross. So gross. So gross. For 5, it's got flying and haste. It's a 4/4, and when it attacks or is targeted, created a treasure token, and then while it's on the battlefield, you can crack those treasure tokens for 2 instead of 1. Whew! All these cards do so much crap. Jiminy Crickets. Grave Titan ETBs enters the battlefield, creating 2/2 zombies, and when it attacks, it creates 2/2 zombies as well. Yeah, buddy. Hero of Bladehold for 4/3/4 with Battle Cry. That just sounds so badass. Whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Battle Cry! That sounds like it needs to be in a video game. Whenever Hero of Bladehold attacks, put 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Schmackalacka. Alright, Ilharg the Raise Boar. I think this just got reprinted in Secret Lair, or it has been somewhat recently. For 5, it's a 6/6 trample. When it attacks, you can put a creature from your hand on the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. And if it dies, you can put it, I don't know, where can you put it? Third from the top. Third from the top. I was reading the card just like you. The more exciting stuff is the first half of that. Croxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. I just think this is funny, and it keeps whittling down your opponent's life. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice unless it escaped. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards. Each opponent, remember, each opponent, as in all opponents, discards a card. Then each opponent who didn't discard a land card this way loses 3 life. And for 4, you can escape it and exile 5 cards from your graveyard, and then it's on the battlefield, y'all. On the battlefield without having to sag. Laelia, the Blade Reforged. Whew, say that 5 times fast. Another 2/2 power. Haste, whenever it enters the battlefield, attacks, exile top card of your library. You can play that card this turn. I like that. We're trying to get through our library. Whenever you exile 1 or more cards from your library and or your graveyard, put a 1/1 counter on it. Yeah, buddy. Leonin War Leader. Whenever attacked, create 2 1/1 white cat creature tokens with lifelink. Morog. I love Morog. Morog is so badass. Each creature you control gets +1 for each time it has attacked this turn. Drop a land whenever land enters the battlefield under your control if it's your main phase. There's an additional combat phase after this phase. What? At the beginning of combat, untap all creatures you control. This thing wins games, folks. It wins games. And this is not a landfall deck, but I mean, we have Fabled Passage in here. You know, there's a couple shenanigans in here, fetch lands that you can crack. So, I mean, it's got some landfall stuff going on. Nepharox, Overlord of Grixis, for 6/5/5 Flying Exalted. Just means if it attacks alone, it gets +1/+1 till end of turn. But that's not the important part. Whenever Overlord of Grixis attacks alone, defending player sacrifices a creature. Yes. Yes, indeed. Rakshana Debaser. For 6. Not very many times I'm going to put this in a deck, but this is one of them. Whenever Rakshana Debaser attacks, put target creature card from defending player's graveyard on the battlefield under your control. I'm going to steal your shizzle. What? And it can encore. It can 6 black. You can exile the card, and for each opponent, create a token copy of this thing. Swinging which means it triggers 3 times. You can steal 3 things, and then you sack it at the beginning of your next end step. So ridiculous. That is a ridiculous card. If you encore this thing, I want to hear about it. Sun Titan comes onto the battlefield, enters the battlefield. Yeah, comes onto the battlefield or attacks. You can return a permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That won't necessarily trigger a ton because we have a lot of spells that are more than that, but it will trigger some. The Haunt of Hightower. Sorry, it looks so funky. I think that's the only version, is that foily version. Flying Lifelink. When it attacks, defending player discards a card. Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a 1/1 counter on it. So this thing can get ginormoso. Okay, so I thought about this and I thought about this. And I almost didn't put Ulamog in here. But it's so funny, and we are ramping a ridiculous amount. And frankly, this thing just wins games. So I put it in here. You can absolutely swap this out. I laugh every time I see this in this deck because it's just janky as F. When you cast Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, exile 2 target permanents. It's indestructible, and whenever Ulamog attacks, defending player exiles the top 20 cards of his or her library. If you have another Eldrazi you'd rather have in here, just put it in here. Or you can absolutely just not play this at all. But I think you should. I really think you should. All right. I always mess up this. Velamachus Lorehold. Maybe I got that right. It's a 7-drop, 5/5 Flying Vigilance Haste. This thing is great. I have this in a couple other decks just because its attack is so great. Whenever it attacks, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You can cast an instance or sorcery spell with mana value less than or equal to the power from among them without paying its mana cost. So it has to be a 5/5 or less in terms of mana cost. So that's going to trigger most things. And wouldn't that be nice if you end up with a demonic tutor as one of your choices? We're in tutor now. Search your library for a card, put that card in your hand, and then shuffle your library. Enlightened Tutor. Search your library for an artifact or enchantment card and reveal that card to all players. Shuffle and put it on top of your deck. Go grab mana rocks. Go grab whatever the heck you want. Vampiric Tutor. Also, put it on top of your library. Lose 2 life, but you don't have to reveal it, which is nice. Nice! Noise. All right, and then we got the maybe board, which is just possible swaps. I think I combined those two together. All right, and that is it, folks, for Isshin 2 Heavens as one. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this build. It's going to surprise people because people seeing you play this, they're going to just assume that you're playing Samurai Tribal or Human Samurai Attack Alone crapola, which, you know, that's fine and dandy, but I think you're going to have a hell of amount of fun playing this version or some version of this if you end up doing budgetary cuts and all that. All right, groovy. Check you later. Thanks for tuning in. MTG Friends. Yes, sir.